Welcome to the Korea Society's video series, Author Talks. Prepare yourself for the highly anticipated conclusion to the instant New York Times bestselling book from Korea. Snowglobe is a powerful young adult dystopian duology created and written by Soyoung Park. Translated into English by Jungmin Lee Comfort, Snowglobe 2 brings you a thrilling finale to this duology, promising even more dark secrets and shocking surprises. Originally published in Korea in 2020 and the winner of the Changbi Kakao Page Young Adult Novel Award, the first book of this duology was named Cosmopolitan's Best Young Adult Book of the Year and one of Best Books of the Year by Kirkus Reviews in 2024. We are thrilled to welcome back to the Korea Society the author of the Snowglobe duology, Soyoung Park. Soyoung, it is great to have you back here, albeit virtually.
Hi, yes, thank you for having me again. I'm so glad to be talking about Snowglobe duology this time, following the journey we started last year.
For those readers who may not be so familiar with the world of Snowglobe, your duology is set in a dystopian world with a climate-controlled city. What inspired you to create such a setting?
Well, climate change is a serious problem that we cannot get away from. However, there's a bigger issue we deal with, every day, every minute, which is social media. That's really where it all started for me. We are obsessed with social media. It shapes how we see the world, how we learn about other people, and how we represent ourselves. Now we watch each other's lives almost in real time. Driven by this technology, we entered an era of fame. Everyone can be famous, and fame has become the new currency. You share your sadness, your happiness, basically your whole life, and in return, you get likes, followers, and money. So I was wondering, what if we keep going in this direction nonstop? What if fame becomes the one and only key to success, which is where we are headed? So I wanted to see the ultimate future of being a celebrity. So I needed the people in my book to be in front of camera. I needed a reason for them to be like that. And the reason turned out to be a brutal freezing weather. In Snowglobe, the global temperature drops to negative 42 degrees. There's only one warm city called Snowglobe, and the city is wired with reality show cameras. So, if you want to live inside the dome, you have to surrender the cameras and give up your privacy 100%. So that people in the open world watch your life as entertainment. Their lives are harsh, cold, brutal, so they need some distractions like our smartphones. So even though climate change isn't the main subject of the story, it's what makes the whole system of snow globe possible. And a new ice age caused by the climate change we are going through it right now sounded very believable to me since we are not doing enough to stop it. So I didn't set out to write a story about the environment, but I couldn't imagine this future without it.
But let's talk a little bit about this idea of basically being in front of a camera 24 hours. Um, Outside of Snow Globe, as you said, is this frozen wasteland, basically. But every day, people face this icy world to get to their jobs at a power plant, and that's where they produce energy that the warm city Snow Globe needs. And the only way they kind of comfort themselves or entertain themselves, as you said, is in this form of 24-hour streaming that they all watch and they're obsessed with. So you mentioned social media, but can you tell us a little bit more about this concept of captivating people with, the images and perceptions and sort of the make believe that seems real?
In a way, the protagonist Chobahm is a reflection of my teenage self. When I was 15, 16, I wanted to be a great writer, just as Chobahm wants to be the greatest director of Snowglobe. But so at the time, I wanted as many people as possible to read my book because I knew the power of imagination and wanted to give it to as many people as possible. But it was long before K pop, K drama, and K wave. So when I was 15, I couldn't imagine that global readers would read my novel if I wrote my stories in Korean. So that's why I decided to go to America to study English as an exchange student in high school. And that was the first time that I experienced the gap between my ideal self and myself in real life. I wanted to be just fluent in English and proactive and anything cool, but I was against all of them. I guess many young people nowadays experience what I have experienced when I was their age on a greater scale because of social media. With social media, we watch so many ideal people and their lives. Just scrolling our phones, we can keep comparing our normal looking selves to the ideal people every minute, every second. So it seems like nobody wants to be themselves anymore. And I know that feeling because I have been there too. So that's why I wrote Snow Globe to show that we all struggle with that gap between how we see ourselves and how we want to be seen. And I also wrote Snow Globe hoping readers feel a little less alone when they follow Chobam's journey and a little closer to their own because like I said, we all are ready more than special and we just don't know how to discover how valuable we are. So Chobam will help you embrace yourself again, hopefully. So that's the message that I wanted to deliver, like in terms of social media and the perceptions, we have to keep fighting every day with social media era. And basically, yes, that's what I wanted to say.
Chobam's journey from an outsider to becoming a star inside Snow Globe is central to the story in the first book. Um, and then in the second one, the Snow Globe 2, Chobam faces new choices that pushes her perhaps further away from who she used to be. Um, can you tell us a little bit more about this journey of Chobam, as you mentioned, and how did you balance her personal survival with her growing sense of responsibility in the second book?
So, when Chobam is asked to be the stand in for the most beloved celebrity in Snow Globe, named Harry, Chobam accepts the deal pretty quickly. Even though her dream was to become the greatest director of all time, Chobam decides to step in front of the camera instead.
Mm-hmm.
This shows that her true desire was to be someone special. In order to be special, she chose to give up her own identity and become someone else. So along the way, she inevitably faces risks like being caught by people who were very close to Harry. She even has to live with Harry's family. So she has to keep pretending to be Harry, fooling her family, the cameras, and her fans. It's like she's on stage 24/7. And as time goes on, she gets closer to the dark secrets lying behind this whole performance. And those secrets shake her belief system and her entire life. And the choice she makes at that point is what truly makes her the protagonist of this story. So Well, I cannot tell you how the story ends, but I love to share this. Chobam's journey isn't about becoming someone special. It's about finding the true meaning of herself, yourself. And I believe that our life is a story, and without meaning, no matter how epic it looks, it can still feel empty. So I don't want to recommend Snowglobe to anyone who have felt stuck, because Chobam's journey might take you to a place where you can find your own meaning and help your story, your life turn to the next page.
This idea of personal identity and reality versus perception is very interesting because, in a sense, Chobahm is pretending to be somebody else,
Mhm.
and yet she is finding her true self by doing so. So, can you tell us a little bit about this idea of reality versus perception and how you view that issue, especially for people who are living in this world, as you said, surrounded by sort of conceived reality and many images that may seem true but may not be really true.
Mhm. Well, nowadays I think a lot about control of my life because, well, in Snowglobe, people inside the city don't have control over their footage. Directors decide what to show and how to show their lives. But in our world, YouTubers and influencers are in charge of their videos. They choose what to show about themselves. But let me ask you, do you really think that we have the control? Because I do not think so. Well, let me tell you my experience. Very recently, I joined Instagram with my official other account, well, which is Soyoung Park Writes, by the way. Now, everywhere I go, I'm like, oh, I should have brought my books, post them in front of this cool background, and shared it on my Instagram. And sometimes I do bring my books and focus only on taking photos of them. I just cannot focus on my feelings anymore. I'm just obsessed with how to represent my books myself. Well, I might call it my duty as an author, but it still feels like social media is in control, not me. And it tells me that do this and do that to get more followers. And I think many of us have lost control of ourselves. Instead, social media has taken over. And social media makes us feel that we don't get enough likes from followers and we are doing something wrong. And then we start thinking that our lives are not enough to be liked. In Snowglobe, the protagonist Chobahm is in the exact same situation. She wants to be proven special, just like us. And that's why I think she's a very relatable character. And I believe many readers would find themselves in Chobahm. And that's why I want my readers to follow Chobam's journey and see where she arrives. She will show you how to feel assured and good about yourself without likes from others. Because I did her story, I could start my Instagram account because if I didn't, I knew that I would care so much about what others think about me. But Chobam's story reminds me, and hopefully my readers, that we are already more than special because each one of us has our own story, and that's what makes each one of us truly irreplaceable. So I'm so glad that I have already been to her journey so that I could still manage my Instagram and still can be myself.
In the second book, the action is more concentrated on what's going on in the snow globe, the dome city.
Mhm.
So when you are writing these two very different world, one the outside of the snow globe and one inside the snow globe. What story did you want to tell with each one of them? And how do they reflect the world we live in?
Well, I feel like I want to be humble, but I cannot lie that I think I truly captured the very core of our society because even though the world is very divided into two different worlds in this book, but I feel like those both of those worlds look very alike where we live in right now because inside the dome, the people are called actors and actresses. So it feels like they are very different from who we are, but they are just like the extreme version of ourselves who are very obsessed with, you know, uh, who wants to be famous. Nowadays we want to be famous because that's the great way to earn money or that's just feel great or whatever the reason is, but in this world they have to be famous to survive in this harsh environment. That's the only difference. But still, it feels like we are getting very close to where these characters live. And then also, the people who are in the open world, they work 10 hours a day because they have to generate electricity and there's no much choices of jobs, so it feels like, oh, that's very different from where we are. But still, nowadays we are struggling to, survive, and there's only like one entertainment that we easily go is that smartphones. So we want ourselves to be distracted by smartphones. So that's how we forget the harsh reality. Otherwise, we have to keep think about how I can pay my bills next month, or can I move to a bigger house? Can I like raise my child? Well, so we don't want to think about those big questions a lot. That's why we need a distraction. And that's why we just watch YouTube's, Netflix, TikToks, Instagram, Reels, because they make us like, I don't know, thoughtless. So it's just the same mechanism. So I think even though Snowglobe is set in a new ice age, is far away from where we are, but still feels like very, very look-alike where we live.
The book features sort of a mix of sci-fi and thriller. Um, so, how did you balance those different elements, and what challenges did you face as a writer while you were writing this book?
To be honest, I didn't really feel like I was balancing different genres because I just put everything I love into the story. And the reason I love sci fi is because it gives me a safe distance. It talks about societies, systems, problems, and even brutality of humanism, but in a way that's not directly about our world. At the same time, it's still based on real issues, just shifted a little. That distance makes it easier for me to explore real irony, real chaos, and real lessons without feeling overwhelmed by them. And I also love thrillers because they just don't let me go. I love falling into another world so deeply that I can forget my own reality for a while. So I wanted Snow Globe to be one of those books, the kind of story you can't put down because you have to know what happens next. Well, of course, blending sci fi and thriller naturally wasn't always easy. I had to make sure that the tension never dropped, even while building the world. But for me, the challenge was part of the fun too.
And I know you've heard this probably millions times, um, but Snow Globe has been compared to, say, the Hunger Games and
Mhm.
Squid Game, all the games. How do you feel about these comparisons? And what do you think sets your book apart from them?
Well, I feel really grateful that Snow Globe is being compared to big names like The Hunger Games or Squid Game because it means readers who enjoy fast paced, high stakes stories can enjoy Snow Globe too. And that's pretty amazing. And yes, they share some surface elements like dystopian settings, district systems, survival. But I think what sets Snow Globe apart is how the world looks so fair and peaceful. They don't want your life, all they ask is your privacy. How simple is that? But that's the scary part because it justifies the system. The reason why you can't live inside the dome and the reason why you have to work 10 hours a day to generate electricity is simply because you're not interesting enough. That's it. It's like, it's not the system's fault, it's yours. And I think this is the most brutal part of Snow Globe. It makes you feel like you are the reason. And honestly, it's not so different from the world we live in. We already live in a world where systemic problems are often blamed on individuals. If you are struggling, it's not because the system is broken, it's because you're not working hard enough or you're not good enough. It makes you feel like that way. And that kind of thinking hides the real problems and makes people blame themselves instead of asking bigger questions. So I think this is why Snow Globe feels so real, even though it's a sci-fi novel. And this is also why I felt so satisfied with what Chobahm does to the system in book two.
Which you'll have to read to find out exactly what she does.
I cannot tell you at this point.
And then we also wanted to ask you about your thoughts on this translation process. As we mentioned, the translator of this book from Korean to English is Jungmin Lee Comfort. And I believe there has been also other language translations of this book. How do you think it affects the reception of your book in the English speaking world? And what has it been your experience watching your book translated into other languages?
Mhm. Well, before I say anything else, I'd love to appreciate Min, the translator's hard work. She was born and raised in Korea and moved to America, spending half of her life there, which makes her the perfect person to translate Korean elements into English, I think so. And because she was the perfect fit, I didn't have to be very involved in the translation process. All I had to do was provide some extra explanations about the setting or particular scenes. And I think one of the great joys of reading international novels is that you can learn about other cultures, and Chongmin did a great job with that part. For example, there's a dish called miyeok soup. You know what that is. It's a traditional Korean soup that people eat on their birthdays for healthy, long life. So it's a basically birthday soup. And Jungmin could have translated the soup as seaweed soup so that the readers could get the image, but she left a space for readers to look it up and feel that tiny moment of cultural discovery for themselves. And of course, Snow Globe couldn't keep every single detail from the original because otherwise it would have needed too much explanation. But I think keeping little moments like milk soup was a great step, and I really hope American readers can feel the heart of the story through that. And other than English version of Snowglobe, there are many other languages like recently French and German, Polish. So many various versions of Snowglobe were out recently, and I feel so honored and grateful to see my books, just take a little trips of its own and meet global readers. And I hope that global readers would enjoy this book because this book is very universal. It contains universal themes like social medias and its side effects kind of stuff. So I feels like everyone could be very connected to the world, even though no matter where you're from. And I hope that Snow Globe could also go more other countries with its story.
So we've talked about social media a little bit, and we have to confess that through social media, we ask your fans to submit questions for you. So here's a couple of them. The first one is having a background in journalism. How did that experience influence your approach to writing fiction?
The biggest lesson I've got from my study and experience in journalism was that media can twist the truth. It's like learning about an elephant. If you learn about an elephant through one media channel that only shows the nose of an elephant, you would think that elephants look like a snake. Or if you learn about an elephant through another media channel that only shows the ear of an elephant, you would think elephants are flat. Just like this, media can deceive us by showing truth, edited, partial truth. This lesson had a huge influence on me when I shaped the world of Snow Globe. In Snow Globe, the world is built on that kind of edited truth. The parts people are allowed to see and the parts that are kept hidden. So we can never see the full picture if we don't question. And Snow Globe uses reality shows as distractions. And we have so many distractions, like smartphone, YouTube's reels, and everything. So, well, to sum up, I guess my journalism background shaped more of how I see the world rather than how I write stories. But maybe that's the most important part after all, because that's what made who I am right now, and that made my point of view and everything. So it helped me build a whole new world every time. And yeah, I guess that's what journalism taught me.
Another question was, what influences from film, television, or literature helped shape your vision for the Snow Globe series?
There's one certain film that directly inspired Snow Globe, and I don't think you could guess. It was The Hateful Eight by Quentin Tarantino, because I love the winter scenery in that movie, all the snow, the freezing atmosphere, and it made me want to create a dystopian world that's frozen and cold instead of burning and dry. Because sometimes people ask me, why did you choose like freezing dystopia? You could have made a burning hot dystopia. And I'm like, well, I didn't think about Burning Dystopia at all because I was so influenced by that movie. So, yeah, that was the film had huge influence on me. And other than that, I cannot think of any other mores because sometimes people also ask me like the Truman Show because that movie is also about a guy who has been exposed to the world his entire life. But the ironic part is that when I was building up the world for Snowglobe, I didn't even think about the Truman Show at all. And after I finished building up the world, I was like, wait, isn't this the Truman Show? So I had to rewatch the movie all over again. And then I was sure that, oh, my world is totally different from the Truman Show. So I can go on. And yeah, so other than that, I cannot think of any others.
You did mention the possibility of a spin-off or perhaps a prequel or sequel after the release of the Snow Globe 2. So many people wanted to know, and so do we. What can we look forward to reading from you? Is it in the world of Snow Globe or something else?
Well, it's just my personal hope at this moment, but I am thinking about a spin-off, and that's like composed of short stories based on the same world of Snow Globe. So I can tell a story of a person who cares about the cameras all the time. It's like they feel like they are being watched by some type of modern god. So they act like I cannot do anything wrong because people are watching me. So that's why this person is so obsessed with their morality. I think that would be fun. And also, I'm thinking about a spin-off, and this time, the protagonist would be Chomiryu, that killer. She has killed 9 men for reality shows, and I love her so much. So I want to talk about her more because even after writing Snow Globe 2, well, I feel so much about her. I cannot tell you what happened to her at this moment, but I owe her so much and I just love her so much. So I want to talk about her stories even more if I have a chance.
Well, until then, Snow Globe 2 is available wherever books are sold. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me again. I mean, I never thought that I could talk about book two right after I talked about book one in person at the Korea Society. So thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for great questions. And I had a really good time.
Thank you.